So Modern Warfare 3 is bringing along 16 maps at launch for 6v6 core gameplay, and all of those have been seen before, in the original Modern Warfare 2 all the way back in 2009, 14 years ago. Kind of crazy to think it's been that long, huh? I mean, we're really getting old. But anyways, with 4 of the maps already playable in the Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer beta, how many changes, if any, have been made to the classic maps, and just how much of a quality difference can we see in Modern Warfare 3 versus the original Modern Warfare 2 maps? Today we're taking a look at how much difference there is truly in Modern Warfare 3's multiplayer maps versus the 2009 Modern Warfare 2 originals, with side-by-side and direct comparisons. As we go along, drop your thoughts below. What do you think of the treatment of these classic maps? How do you feel they've been handled? And what maps are you looking forward to playing with the full game, or perhaps even with High Rise next week in the crossplay beta? Drop your thoughts down below, but if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare 3. We've got a ton of upcoming stuff you still won't want to miss, and I'd love to have in the community. Finally, check out my friends over at G Fuel for all your energy needs as we gear up towards launch and grind season. Code Espresso getting you up to 30% off certain tubs and flavors at checkout, but more on that a little later. For now, let's jump into the differences between Modern Warfare 3's revitalization of the classic Modern Warfare 2 maps. So firstly, a disclaimer here. PlayStation and console as a whole isn't going to do the 2023 versions nearly as much justice as it would, say, on a stacked PC rig with everything maxed out in terms of quality settings, like at full launch or even maybe next week. But honestly, I couldn't help myself but do a side-by-side comparison of some of the most iconic maps, or a small helping of some of the most iconic maps in COD history. We'll have a few more things here that will do better justice in terms of quality comparisons in different style videos a little later next week and beyond, but for now, I want to take a little bit of time to see what we had on offer right now. Not to mention, I'm kind of suspecting there may be still some texture packs missing that maybe day one we'll see some increases in quality as well. That part, though, is a little speculation. Additionally, you will notice the FOV difference. I was really debating on scaling 2023's version down to 80 FOV to match the old school console FOV, but ultimately I decided against it to showcase the larger scaling differences and the progression since 2009 for the console versions that are playable. And lastly, both these comparisons are recorded at 4K, though the 2023 version is using native 4K output on the PS5, while the 2009 original versions are upscaled on Xbox Series X, but output to be played and recorded on a 4K monitor, but upscaled via the console itself, not during my editing process. But all that said, all that housekeeping stuff out of the way, let's start with Favela. Graphically speaking, along with Skidrow, I'd say is probably the most updated in terms of texture, detail, and more. Favela, while always being a densely packed map, wasn't necessarily a super over-the-top map in terms of graphical detailed maps. There may be parts to this where, again, talking visibility, it may be tougher to see some enemies because of how much is actually going on. But honestly, I do overall enjoy the difference. A lot more that adds to the busyness and nature of it. When you think of the location of Favela, you do think that there's a lot going on in terms of that densely populated area. So graphically speaking, I enjoy this update here with this, even if it may be a little busy. Of noticeable differences, though, there are a lot of smaller differences, like the spawn cars on A side and Domination. Those were slightly adjusted. You can also mantle on top of them a lot easier than you could in the originals. The playground was subsidized so that it's no longer a swing set and a slide, which opens up that corner a bit more. It's now just that slide. The seaside street is a bit more open and has better visibility over top of that brick wall beyond Barbershop, where now the 3-story building's rooftop is a bit more visible. Some of the angles, like the middle map 3-story 1x1, has a bit higher brick locations that impose a little less visibility, and perhaps icon-wise, the pitch in mid-map is now blacktop rather than a grass pitch. But beyond that, the key items that I noticed in terms of like actual genuine changes to the map come down to honestly a lot of the mantling systems now in play. There's a handful of new jump spots that you can use that you couldn't before. For example, you can make that jump out of the window in the water tower building to the 2nd-story mid-brick building. You can also jump on top of that hut that's on the other side of the pitch staircase, that being a power position with the hill there in hardpoint in this updated version of the map. And one of my favorites is there's now a way to get to the water tower rooftop without having to go through that choke point staircase. In the original, you had to run up that staircase and hope nobody was camping there to take you out. But now you can end up either going up the staircase, or there's a jump up spot with a dumpster underneath that window overlooking the long street side that you can jump up either into 2nd story, or you can take it all the way to the roof, which is definitely a cool little addition. But that's Favela. Skidrow, again, like Favela, I'd say is one of perhaps the most updated in terms of density and things to catch. Graphically speaking, again, I do like that detail, the way that everything was added around it. There's a lot more textures, a lot more, that playing at high resolution, you'll notice a lot more. But when we talk about map changes, just like Favela, there's a decent number of them here that can make a difference in how you remember playing the game versus how you'll play it now. Of the smaller stuff, the bigger of them is that they ended up removing the minigun in the apartments behind Playground. Now that one's probably for the best, but man, for the memes, it kind of would have been funny to see that return here within Modern Warfare 3. So that's something that if you remember just going back there, a lot of players would camp there and just look right into bookstore and you'd be taken out in an instant by a minigun. Additionally, there's an iconic hole in the floor in mid-map where that's been patched up so you can no longer throw grenades through the levels like you could back in the day. You can't shoot down to anybody camping in bookstore. That has been patched up and is not going to be there in the 2023 version. Additionally, that shipping and cargo building out by the parking lot, there was a small hole for bricks that players were able to shoot through looking down that long hallway, but that was removed in favor of a whole window. Again, probably for the best since that was a major power position and an already major choke point for that map, especially now playing through hardpoint. That's something that is going to be a big addition here and change to the map overall. But probably one of the biggest ones for at least hardpoint when we come back to it deals with that same building. That building is a big power position, and when there's a hardpoint in there, it's incredibly hard to break to begin with because of that funnel point of the long hallway, the openness of the parking lot. But if you can end up getting to the building itself, previously you were limited to just having to go up that one staircase. Now you're not. You can actually jump on top of some boxes and go in through the awnings and the window there. And that's a big change that I'm a big fan of, especially amidst all these other changes to the maps that we've seen so far. But anyways, that's Skid Row. Next, Estate. For me, graphically speaking, upscaling and detailing, while parts of the original map from Modern Warfare 2 in 2009 have a bit more, let's go, complexity than what we have right now, graphical textures are absolutely no doubt much better in 2023. Foliage density, leaves, and minor details like that, stuff on trees might still look to be almost low poly in nature on the current 2023 version, but ultimately, texture-wise, a much better increase in terms of quality. One additional thing that I kind of want to point out with this map in particular is that there are sequences that with the MCW that it almost looks cartoony, while the rest of the world looks totally fine, or at least in my opinion. But in terms of overall resolution, it's naturally a much better evolution than what we had, say, back in 2009. Now, overall, some major differences to this map by comparison to the original are firstly, the global lighting. That's one thing that you may notice here right off the bat whenever we do these side-by-side and transitions back and forth. It's way brighter, which is definitely nice. However, I do find, at least with the overall experience in Modern Warfare 3 right now, there are still some visibility problems across the board. So whether or not the global lighting makes any difference to the original, that's probably subjective. You still might have some tough times spotting enemies across the map because of those visibility differences. Now that said, the only other core major difference here that I would say is of importance is a location now by the boat dock. You can actually now go and swim in that water past the boat dock, whereas previously you had that little puddle you could run through at the very end, but it still stopped you from going into the water. It was just blocked off. Now you can end up going out there if you really want to, swimming and going to a sort of lily pad floating dock out there, but it doesn't really do you any good. You're exposed, the water's not all that deep, so it's very easy to shoot through, and it's just kind of there. But anyways, that's the differences with Estate. Finally, we have Rust. Now, other than graphical updates, not a whole ton has been changed in terms of drastic note. There have been some things that, again, like leveling and elevation of certain barriers has been changed. Some jump up spots have been slightly adjusted, like you can end up getting on some crates to jump over top of them instead of having to go through them and things like that. But in regards to overall massive changes, there's not been a whole ton. Thematically, though, again, they've added more to make the map updated and to fit the theme of Modern Warfare 3. The architecture of some structures have been updated, but ultimately it's essentially the Rust that you still do remember from back in the day, with maybe like some different cutouts for some spawn points, whereas they wouldn't have been there in 2009. Now, the biggest thing in regards to these maps and what we see by comparison to 2009 is obviously the overall pacing. That is something that this game plays so much faster than the originals back in 2009. The mantling, movement speed, slide speed, all that kind of stuff really does contribute to making these maps to play so much faster. So while when you take a look at a lot of these maps that we'll see coming with the launch, there's some pretty big maps by comparison. Like maps like Derail, Rundown, Underpass, those are probably like larger maps by comparison to what we've seen in the last couple of years, but with the pacing of play, I wouldn't be surprised if they played just fine in terms of the overall pacing in 6v6, whereas previously, you might remember those maps being pretty slow to play on. Like, I'm talking maybe 20, 25 kills max. So that's something to consider, that the pace of play is probably the biggest change we'll see to any of these maps here upcoming. And finally, just for the fun of it, while we're talking more so about the maps, of course, you will definitely notice that if you go back and look at some of the audio for Modern Warfare 2 2009 versus the audio we have for the weapons now that are supposed to be the counterparts for those weapons, like the MCW is supposed to be the ACR, the Striker is supposed to be the UMP, well, that's going to be something that audio is drastically different, both from a compression perspective, where back in 2009, the audio was way more compressed, way more tinny in nature, whereas these new audio systems in play allow the audio to breathe a bit more, if that makes sense. But anyways, take a listen.
Reloading. Changing mag.
Now, I definitely think there could be audio adjustments done, but you'll see that there are differences here with this. But honestly, I would truly love to see a sort of throwback audio pack by default, similar to how you have those hit marker sound effects and what you can change. I would love to see that happen with Modern Warfare 3 for all these classic weapons, but I kind of think that if we see that, it'll be monetized like we saw in Modern Warfare 2. But I mean, one can hope, right? But anyways, that is the changes, comparisons, and differences between the original 2009 Modern Warfare 2 maps and what we see within Modern Warfare 3 and the multiplayer beta, and still a lot to come in the full launch. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of these changes? Do you like some of what we see with these changes? Do you think they're unnecessary? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts down below. Before we wrap everything up, make sure to check out my friends over at G Fuel. Again, grind time is coming up here. The launch is upcoming for Modern Warfare 3, which means a lot of weapons to grind out, a lot of camos to grind out in both multiplayer and zombies. So if you want to fuel your game sessions, or honestly, just like me, even have it like a cup of coffee in the morning for you to get your day going, they've got a ton of awesome flavors on offer. My team Carnage just put out the new flavor of Pog Juice. It's an awesome pomegranate flavor, which honestly, I love. Yes, I'm kind of biased, but I'd say it's probably top 3 of my favorite flavors at the moment. Super humbling to be able to share that with the world now after working on that with everybody for like 2 years now at this point. So if you guys want to check that or other flavors out, code Espresso gets you up to 30% off your entire order. Link down below in the description if you'd like to check it out. But for now, that's what we're going to call it. Drop your thoughts on the changes. If you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to stay updated with all things Modern Warfare 3, as we have a ton upcoming still. You guys definitely will not want to miss out on. But for now, that's what we're going to call it. So thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.